The sky was bleeding fire. For weeks, the alien motherships had blotted out the sun. People thought they came to conquer. But the truth was worse. They came to harvest. Cities crumbled in minutes. Oceans boiled. Forests ignited. Entire continents fell silent under the weight of their machines. The aliens didn't want slaves or land. They wanted the planet itself. I was one of the last survivors in New London. Every day, the ground shook as their drills burrowed into every orifice near me. I could feel it weakening, dying. When the evacuation call went out, it wasn't a promise of safety. It was a warning. Get to orbit or be buried here forever. We ran. Families, soldiers, strangers, all crammed into the last shuttles. Above us, the sky was torn open by fire. Their ships, colossal, black, endless, watched like predators. As our shuttle lifted, I looked down. Earth wasn't Earth anymore. The rivers were red, the seas black. Cities glowed like open wounds, and then I saw it, the cracks spreading across the continents like veins of light. They were tearing the planet apart from the inside. Someone whispered, "We were never meant to survive. They're taking everything." And then it happened. A sound, not a roar, not an explosion, but something deeper. The sound of a world breaking. The oceans heaved upward. The land split open. The earth fractured. In the silence of space, we watched our home shatter like glass. Billions of lives erased in a heartbeat. Our shuttle drifted with the others, just specks in the void. Behind us, nothing but debris, fire, and the cold, black shadows of the harvesters moving on, searching for their next planet. And that's when it hit me. We weren't survivors. We were refugees, homeless, hunted, and utterly alone.
Reflections' dark secret. They say you shouldn't look too long at yourself in a broken mirror, but I never believed in old wives' tales, until last week when my grandmother's antique shattered at my feet. Since then, my reflection lags like a buffering video, a fraction of a second slower than my real movements. At first, I chalked it up to nerves or lack of sleep, but tonight, something changed. As I brushed my teeth, I paused, toothbrush midair, and watched my image freeze, then slowly, deliberately, smile before I even thought to move. My skin prickled. I mouthed hello, but my reflection's lips moved differently, shaping words I didn't say. I leaned closer, heart pounding, and it whispered silently, syllables twisted and unfamiliar. But I understood. Let me in. I stumbled backwards, splashing water on the counter, but the image remained, its grin stretching impossibly wide, eyes glinting with a hunger I'd never seen in myself. Desperate, I covered every mirror in the apartment, but the lag followed me. Shiny doorknobs, phone screens, blacked-out windows. Any surface that caught my face showed the same delay, the same sinister autonomy. Messages appeared on fogged glass and steamy tiles, always the same words, begging, taunting, "Let me in." My own warped features haunted even my dreams, the reflection growing bolder each night. Tonight, I gave in. I watched as my reflection pressed its hand to the glass. My hand, but not, and I pressed back. Cold seeped into my skin and I felt a pull like falling underwater, breathless and screaming in silence. As the world blurred, I realized too late I'm on the other side now, trapped, and my reflection walks free, smiling with my face, mouthing words I can't control. If you see your reflection lag, don't wait for it to catch up. Run.
Child's drawing haunts dad. They say kids see things we can't, but I always thought that was just superstition. Until last Thursday when my daughter handed me a drawing that made my blood run cold. It was parent-teacher night, and she'd been so proud, tugging me by the sleeve, urging me to look at her special project. I bent down, expecting stick figures and rainbows, but instead, I saw a face I knew too well, a face I'd never told anyone about. The eyes were hollow black circles, the grin impossibly wide, stretched ear to ear. I'd seen that face every night for weeks, standing at the end of my bed, grinning, waiting. At first, I tried to brush it off as coincidence. Maybe she'd caught a glimpse of one of my nightmares, or maybe it was just a child's overactive imagination. But that night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, He likes you. He says you watch him too." Her tiny finger pointed to the closet, and for a split second I swore I saw movement, a shadow slipping behind a row of hanging dresses. My heart hammered as I put on a brave face, told her monsters weren't real, and kissed her goodnight. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us both. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that freakish grin. At 3:12 a.m., I woke to a scraping sound, like fingernails on wood. The room was cold, colder than it should have been, and there, at the foot of my bed, was the figure, taller than any man, neck craned at a grotesque angle, eyes fixed on me. It smiled wider as I froze, unable to scream or move. Behind it, the closet door creaked open an inch more, and I realized it was beckoning for someone to join us. The next morning, my daughter was gone, her bed untouched, her drawing missing from the fridge. In the closet, her favorite slippers sat next to a second drawing, this one of two figures, side by side, both grinning, both staring out with empty eyes. I think I know where she went, and I think she wants me to follow. Every night, the thing's smile grows wider, as if waiting for me to finally say yes.
Midnight taxi to nowhere. You know that moment when you realize you're not just lost, but lost somewhere you shouldn't even exist? That's what ran through my mind when the self-driving taxi I called at midnight started ignoring every command to stop. The city outside my window was melting away, replaced by streets I'd never seen before. Cobblestones slick with rain, gas lamps flickering, buildings so old they looked like they were holding their breath. At first, I thought it was a glitch, some weird rerouting, but the ride was too smooth, too deliberate, and the AI's voice was eerily silent. I watched as we zipped past empty intersections and crumbling statues, every turn taking us deeper into a maze of forgotten architecture. My phone lost signal, the screen stuck on a spinning wheel. The taxi's windows refused to roll down, and the doors were locked tight. I tried to shout, to wave at the handful of people I saw on the sidewalks, but their faces were pale blurs, and none of them seemed to hear me. It felt like the car was tunneling back through time, the air growing colder, thicker, as if history itself was pressing in around me. Panic clawed at my chest as we passed a street sign in a language I didn't recognize. The world outside was black and white now, and the few lights left flickered with a sickly glow. I hammered on the glass until my knuckles bled, but the car just drove on, its dashboard displaying a clock that ticked backward. That's when I heard it, the faintest whisper from the speakers, a voice layered over with static, repeating my name over and over, each time more distorted. The last thing I saw before the car stopped was a crowd waiting in the darkness, faces stretched with hunger and longing. The taxi's doors finally unlocked, but I knew stepping out wasn't an escape, it was an invitation. I realized then that I wasn't the first fare this taxi had collected on its midnight route through forgotten eras. And as the crowd moved closer, I understood why none of them ever came back.
Shadow's terrifying secret revealed. I always thought it was funny how my neighbor's dog, a big black mutt with eyes like polished stones, barked at everyone except me. It was like I had some invisible pass, some secret approval. But today, everything changed. If you watch until the end, I'll tell you why I haven't looked at my own shadow since. This afternoon, I was walking home as usual when the dog spotted me. Instead of the usual wagging tail, it froze, hackles up, and started to whimper. Its eyes darted not to me, but to the ground just behind my feet. I turned, confused, noticing how the sun cast my shadow long and thin across the cracked sidewalk. The dog stared at it, almost in terror, before bolting back through the fence, yelping like it'd been kicked. That's when I noticed it. My shadow didn't move with me. It lingered, twisting slightly, as if it was considering something. I laughed it off, but as I walked past the bakery, I caught my reflection in the window. My body moved, but my shadow seemed glued to the spot, head cocked to the side. The air grew cold and thick, and for a split second, I felt like something was watching me from below, pulling at my heels. I sped up, but every step felt heavier, like I was dragging something along that desperately wanted to stay behind. When I finally made it home, I slammed the door and flicked on every light. But in the corner, just out of reach, my shadow lingered, darker than the rest. It stretched, yawned, and I swear, it smiled. That's when I realized the dog never barked at me because it was never me it feared. It was what follows me, what wears my shape when the light is right. Now the only time I see the dog is in my dreams, barking at the foot of my bed, warning me not to turn around. Voicemails from beyond. You ever get that cold, prickly feeling when your phone lights up at night? I used to think it was just anxiety, until last week when I started getting voicemails from my grandmother. Only problem is, she passed away 3 months ago. The first message was static, and her voice, weak, whispering, "Don't let him in tonight." I laughed it off, thinking I'd butt-dialed some old recording. But every night since, the messages have kept coming, always at 3:17 a.m., always ending with her desperate plea. I started losing sleep, checking my call log, blocking the number. Nothing worked. My friends brushed it off as grief, but how could I grieve when she was still calling me, her fear bleeding through every word? The last few messages sounded more urgent, her voice cracking. "He's getting closer. Please, don't let him in." By now I barely left my apartment after dark, and the shadows around my door seemed to thicken each night. 2 days ago I tried calling the number back. It rang once, then dead silence. That night my phone buzzed again. This time the message was just labored breathing, and something faint in the background. A heavy, wet, scraping sound, like fingernails on glass. I replayed the message, heart pounding, and realized it wasn't just my grandma's voice. There was another voice, low and guttural, whispering right over hers, "You can't stop me." Last night the messages stopped. I thought maybe whatever haunted her finally let go. But just now, as I'm recording this, someone knocked at my door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My phone lit up, showing an incoming call, unknown. The screen flickered, and I swear I heard her voice again, pleading through the speaker. "Don't let him in tonight." The knocking hasn't stopped. If you're watching this, don't answer the door after dark, no matter who you think is on the other side.
Tattoo secrets unveiled. The first morning I noticed my tattoo had changed. I blamed it on my groggy eyes. Maybe I'd slept funny or the ink was healing weird. But as I stared down at the twisting black lines on my forearm, I saw a word, "Listen." I laughed it off, but my heart thudded with an anxiety I couldn't quite place. I promised myself I'd check with my artist later. Maybe it was some kind of prank. But as the days slipped by, the messages kept changing. Each one a little more urgent, a little more insistent. Last night, the tattoo simply said, "Run." This morning, that word is burned into my memory, so much that I can barely focus at my job vending food at the city's underground train station. I keep rolling up my sleeve, half expecting the word to vanish, but instead the tattoo morphs before my eyes, the letters writhing. Too late. My hands shake as I serve coffee, glancing over my shoulder at every sound. Yet it's not the crowds that bother me, it's the silence in between, when I can almost hear something soft, scraping, moving behind the tiled walls. By lunchtime, my nerves are shot. The footsteps start, soft at first like a mouse scurrying. But they grow louder, more deliberate. I follow the sound, weaving through the labyrinth of maintenance corridors that snake beneath the station. My flashlight flickers, and the footsteps echo faster, closing in. Every turn I make, the tattoo throbs with heat, the ink pulsing like a heartbeat. I call out, desperate for someone, anyone, but the only reply is the slap of footsteps behind me, impossibly fast, impossibly close. I stumble into a dead end and whirl around, pressing my back to the cold wall. The footsteps stop, and my tattoo flares, fresh letters forming through the pain. Don't look, but I do. From the cracks in the tiles, pale hands emerge, fingers writhing and grasping, pulling something thin and hungry into the light. I scream, but the sound is swallowed by the walls, and as the thing pulls me in, the last thing I see is my tattoo, ink running like fresh blood, spelling out a new word: welcome.
Haunted smartwatch mystery. I always thought the scariest thing about my smartwatch would be running out of battery during a jog, not discovering I'd apparently walked 10,000 steps without leaving my bed. At first, I laughed it off. A glitch, maybe a software update gone wrong. But curiosity got the better of me, especially when the fitness app's map showed a route weaving right out of my bedroom, down the hall, and straight into the dense woods behind my house. The timestamp, all while I was supposedly sleeping. I couldn't shake the unease, so I grabbed a flashlight and my phone and stood at the edge of the trees, replaying the recorded path. The app marked a specific spot deep in the woods with a red dot, like a finish line. Each step I took into the darkness, my skin prickled with the feeling of being watched, the only sound my own breathing and the crunch of leaves underfoot. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone hacked my account, maybe a stray animal with a tracker, but the distance matched a human stride exactly, my stride. As I reached the red dot on the map, the air grew unnaturally cold. My smartwatch buzzed against my wrist, displaying a message I hadn't seen before. You have arrived. 10,000 steps complete. The ground beneath the spot was disturbed, the dirt freshly turned. Something told me to run, but I couldn't move, my muscles locked in place by a fear I'd never known. Then I saw it. A second set of footprints, perfectly mirroring the path on my app, leading right up behind me. I spun around, light trembling in my hand, only to find empty woods. But my watch buzzed again, this time flashing a new goal. Start your next walk. The route, it spiraled back to my house, but now there were two red dots, one at my bedside and one right where I stood. As I backed away, the leaves rustled behind me, and I realized with a shudder that some steps can't be undone. And my tracker wasn't just counting mine anymore.
Trapped in a nightmare. If you ever wake up and realize you're the only one left in a place built for observation, you'll start to wonder who, or what, still watching. That's what happened to me last night. I signed up for a sleep study. Easy money, they said. Just a few nights in a clinical lab, hooked up to some wires. The researchers were friendly. The kind of people who joked about how boring their job was. They promised breakfast in the morning. I remember drifting off as the gentle whir of cameras faded into my dreams. But when I woke up, the world felt off. The lights were too bright, the air too still. No sound of footsteps, no buzz of conversation. I sat up, and that's when I noticed every camera in the room, at least 6 of them, had swiveled to face me. Their little red lights blinked in perfect unison. The window to the control room was empty, the monitors inside running endless loops of static. My phone was gone. My clothes were gone. All I had was a thin hospital gown and the cold floor beneath my feet. I called out, but my voice sounded swallowed by the silence. I tried the door. It was locked, of course. I pressed my face to the glass, squinting into the corridor. Nothing. I banged on the window until my fists hurt. That's when I saw it. A note taped to the far wall, scrawled in frantic handwriting. Do not sleep. They only come when you dream. My heart hammered as the camera's lenses whirred, zooming in on my face, almost as if they were waiting for me to close my eyes. My eyelids grew heavy, an unnatural fatigue settling in. I realized then, the study was never about monitoring sleep. It was about keeping something in, or maybe out. But now the researchers were gone, and the only thing left was me, a room full of cameras, and whatever waited for me on the other side of sleep. The red lights blinked in time with my heartbeat, and as I fought to stay awake, I heard the faintest whisper behind the static. Don't let us in.
Midnight laundromat secrets unveiled. You ever wonder what happens in places that never sleep? Working the night shift at the only 24/7 laundromat in town, I thought I'd seen everything. Until last night, when the dryers started their cycle without anyone touching them. At first, I figured it was some electrical glitch. But when I looked closer, the machines were tumbling clothes I didn't recognize. Shirts and pants, faded and torn, streaked with something dark and sticky that hadn't dried yet. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just a trick of the fluorescent lights. But the stains looked too much like blood. As the hours dragged on, the laundromat stayed empty, except for the relentless whirring of the dryers. Every so often, I caught the scent of copper in the air, sharp and unmistakable, mixing with the usual detergent. I tried to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. When I reached out to pause one of the spinning machines, the door wouldn't budge. My reflection in the glass warped, twisting in ways that made my skin crawl. The stains seemed to spread, leaking from the seams of the clothes, pooling at the bottom of the drum. I started scrolling through the security footage, desperate for a rational explanation. That's when I saw it. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the cameras glitched, flickering between static and shadowy figures. People I'd never seen before, faces blank, features smudged, dragging heavy bags behind them. They loaded the mysterious clothes into the machines, never looking up, and then vanished between frames. My stomach dropped as I watched the timestamp jump ahead. The dryer's already spinning, the shadow's gone. I haven't told anyone about what I saw, but now, every night at 2:13, the dryers start up on their own, and the stains never wash away. Sometimes, if I listen closely, I swear I can hear muffled screams over the hum of the machines. Pleas for help twisted into the fabric, spun endlessly in the dark. If you ever find yourself at a laundromat after midnight, check the contents of the machines before you start your cycle. Some stains are never meant to be cleaned.